appearing in local business publications alongside words like visionary and founder and self-made. Clara's name appeared in the acknowledgments of one article, spelled wrong. A polite email to the editor followed. 2 alternative spellings included, in case the editor wasn't sure. She did not copy Derek. She did not mention it at dinner. She filed it in the same quiet place she was beginning to file other things. A place with no name yet, no folder, no label, just a space that was slowly, carefully filling up. If Derek had paid attention, really paid attention, he might have noticed something shifting in her stillness around that time. He wasn't paying attention. He was already thinking about the next pitch, February 2016, a Tuesday. The office on Elm Street got its keys. Clara had found the space. She negotiated the lease, coordinated the build-out, sourced the furniture, and managed the whole transition without a single dropped client deadline. On the morning they got the keys, Derek posted a photo on LinkedIn standing at the front door with a caption that read, "From a kitchen table to a real office. Dreams don't quit." 47 people liked it. Clara liked it too. From her phone in the parking lot carrying the first box inside, 11-foot ceilings, exposed brick on the north wall, and a conference room Clara painted a deep navy blue, because she had read that clients made faster decisions in rooms with strong color. She was right. Their close rate improved by the following quarter. Nobody connected those two things except her fine. She wasn't keeping score yet. By spring 2016, Meridian had 12 clients and 8 employees. Derek handled new business development and public presence. Clara handled everything else: operations, HR, finance oversight, client retention, and the 10,000 small decisions that kept a growing company from quietly falling apart at the seams. She also handled their home, the groceries, the appointments, the dry cleaning, the dinner reservations for Derek's client lunches that he always forgot to book himself. 2 organizations ran simultaneously under her watch. Neither one had her name on it. People who visited the office liked Derek immediately. He was easy to like, moving through a room with a kind of loose confidence that made people feel relaxed. He had a genuine talent for making whoever he was talking to feel like the most interesting person present. Clients trusted him. Vendors wanted to work with him. New hires wanted to impress him. Clara they respected. There is a difference, and she felt it. Respect is quieter than warmth. It doesn't get you invited to lunch. It doesn't generate the easy conversation at the end of a long meeting. Respect means people follow your processes and deliver on time and say thank you with real sincerity. It means the work gets done. It means the company functions. Respect is, in many ways, more valuable than warmth, but it does not feel like being seen. 22 minutes. That was the drive home on Route 59 on a good night. Clara drove it alone most evenings because Derek was usually still at the office or at a client dinner or at a networking event she had added to his calendar herself. Those drives were not resented. They were used. She processed, planned, made mental lists, talked herself through whatever needed solving before morning, efficient even in her solitude. That efficiency was protecting her, and she didn't fully know it yet. Summer 2016 brought something small that she would remember for a long time: a Friday afternoon team meeting, the kind Clara ran every week to review project status and flag anything at risk. Derek walked in late, which was not unusual, sat at the head of the table, which was his habit, and within 4 minutes had redirected the entire agenda toward a new business idea he wanted to explore. The existing items never got covered. Clara had prepared for 40 minutes the night before. After the meeting, she stayed to lock up, standing in the conference room, the navy blue one. She looked at her printed agenda still sitting on the table, untouched. Every item still open. Every item still needing an answer. She picked it up, folded it once, and put it in her bag. Then she went home and handled all of it by email. Not a word to Derek. Not that night at dinner. Not that weekend. Not at the following week's meeting, which he also attended late. She adjusted. She moved the agenda items. She found other ways to cover the ground. This was what Clara did. She identified the gap and she filled it. cleanly and without announcement, because the alternative was watching something she had built sustain damage. She could not watch that, not yet. If you're still watching, and something about this story is already sitting with you, go ahead and hit subscribe right now. Because what is coming in the next few parts is the reason this story needed to be told. You do not want to miss where this goes. Small dismissals are never dramatic. They were not explosive. Described individually, each sounds like nothing. He forgot to mention her in a meeting. He introduced her to a new client as his operations person. He answered a question about company strategy at a dinner party while she sat next to him, the person who had actually written the strategy. Unasked and unacknowledged, each one alone was survivable. Together they were building something. What neither of them understood yet, what Clara was only beginning to feel at the edge of her awareness, was that a relationship and a business cannot both be quietly failing at the same time without eventually producing something loud. Pressure finds a release. Always. The only question is whether it comes out as a conversation or a consequence. Derek would have chosen a conversation if he had initiated one, which he never did. Because from where he stood, on the surface of things, everything was working. The company was growing. The clients were happy. Clara was handling it. Clara was always handling it. That was exactly the problem. Late 2016. A Tuesday night, driving home alone on Route 59 with the radio off and the windows down, Clara Merritt felt something shift. Quietly, almost imperceptibly. Somewhere in the center of her chest, she noted it, filed it in that unnamed place, and kept driving. 3 years is a long time to file things in an unnamed place. By October 2019, that place had weight, texture. No longer a vague feeling on a late-night drive home. It was something Clara carried with her into every room. Something she had learned to set down quietly beside her chair at the start of each day and pick back up again at the end. Dangerously good at this, she had become. From the outside, the company had never looked better. Meridian Creative Group had grown to 23 employees, 31 active clients, and a revenue figure that had made Derek genuinely proud at the start of that year. A regional business publication had approached him for a feature profile. He said yes immediately. The article ran in September 2019 with a photograph of Derek at his desk. The desk Clara had sourced. In the office Clara had designed. In the building whose lease Clara had renegotiated 18 months earlier, at a rate that saved the company $40,000 over 3 years. The article mentioned Clara once. As Derek's wife, on a Sunday morning with her coffee going cold beside her, she read it twice. Then she set it down on the kitchen table, the same table from Cedar Avenue, the one she had sanded smooth in 2014, and sat with it for a long moment before she got up, rinsed her mug, and started her week. She did not bring it up. October 14, 2019 was a Monday. The drive from Naperville to Michigan Avenue took 53 minutes with morning traffic. Clara wore a gray blazer she had bought specifically for this event. The Meridian 5-year investor presentation. The biggest room the company had ever been in. The moment Derek had been preparing for since July. She had helped him prepare. Every slide fact-checked. The financial narrative in Section 3 restructured. The client retention data rewritten so it told a cleaner story. Until midnight on a Thursday, she had stayed up making sure the numbers were not just accurate but airtight. The presentation was good because of her. 3rd row she sat, left side, seat chosen early because she always arrived early. The ballroom smelled like hotel carpet and fresh coffee, and the particular kind of anticipation that fills a room before something important happens. Blue carpet, white tablecloths, a projector screen so wide it took up the entire front wall. Derek walked out at 11:47 a.m. to a warm round of applause, confident, prepared. Standing at that podium in the Marriott Ballroom on Michigan Avenue, he looked like exactly the kind of man who builds things from nothing. Clara watched from the 3rd row. He opened with the origin story. The kitchen table. He mentioned the kitchen table. She sat up slightly. He described the early days, the first client, the leap of faith it took to leave stable jobs and build something real. A good storyteller, she had always known that. His voice carried just the right amount of controlled emotion, the practiced kind that feels spontaneous. And the room leaned in exactly the way rooms always leaned in for Derek Merritt. Through the growth timeline he moved, 2014 to 2019. 5 years of milestones, of client wins, of team expansion, of revenue curves going in the right direction. He talked about vision. He talked about culture. He talked about the decisions that had defined Meridian's identity in the market. 41 minutes. Clara counted. In 41 minutes, Derek Merritt told the story of a company she had built from a sanded kitchen table in Naperville, Illinois. He did not say her name once, not as co-founder, not as operations director, not as the woman who renegotiated the lease, rebuilt the project management system, hired and trained half the people currently sitting in that room. Not as his wife of 9 years, not as anything. She was in the third row. She was invisible. A pause from the narrator's chair is necessary here, because this scene has stayed with me more than any other part of this story, and something the facts alone cannot fully carry needs to be understood. Clara did not cry. She did not stand up. She did not leave the room or make a sound or show a single thing on her face that the people around her could have named or remembered later. She sat completely still, something that had been bending for 3 years, slowly, quietly, under the weight of 1,000 small erasures. Finally, in that ballroom, on that blue carpet, under that projector light, stopped bending. Not loudly. That is not who Clara is. No scene, no confrontation, nothing Derek would have been able to point to afterward as the moment things changed. It just stopped. When a thing that has been bending for that long finally stops, when it reaches the place past which it cannot return, what happens next is not anger. Clarity arrives instead. Cold, clean, total clarity. Derek finished his presentation to a long, warm applause. He smiled at the room. He shook hands near the podium. By every visible measure, a man at the height of something. Clara picked up her bag. At the coffee station at the back of the ballroom, she poured herself a cup she would not drink. Standing there, alone, with her back to the room, she made a decision so quiet it had no sound at all. Derek thought that presentation was the best thing he had ever done. He was right. It was. And it was also the last thing he would ever do with her beside him. None of that coffee was ever drunk. She set the cup down on the edge of the station, collected her coat from the back of her chair in the third row, and said goodbye to 2 colleagues near the door with a warmth that gave nothing away. The elevator down, alone. Through the Marriott lobby, past the front desk, past the revolving door, and out onto Michigan Avenue, where the October air hit her face like a correction. 11 seconds on that sidewalk. Then she walked to the parking garage, found her car on level 3, sat down, and drove herself home to Naperville in complete silence. No radio, no calls, no podcasts or playlists or any of the small sounds people use to keep their own thoughts at a distance. Just the highway, and the distance closing, and Clara Merritt sitting very straight in the driver's seat with both hands on the wheel. Dinner was made that night. Derek came home at 8:15, still carrying the energy of the presentation, talking about the room's reaction before he'd even taken off his coat. She listened. One question about a follow-up meeting he'd mentioned. She cleaned the kitchen while he moved to the living room, and by 10 o'clock the house was quiet, and she was sitting in the blue chair in the spare room, with her personal laptop open in front of her. Not her work machine. Her personal one. That distinction mattered enormously. Work systems belonged to Meridian. Her personal laptop belonged to her. What she put on it was hers. What she built on it stayed hers, regardless of what happened next. And something she now understood with the cold clarity of a woman who had just watched 41 minutes of her life, narrated by someone else, was going to happen next. A new folder opened on the screen. Nothing dramatic in the name. No timestamps, as no labels that would explain themselves to someone else. Admin, the most boring word she could think of. The kind of folder title that makes eyes slide right past it. Then she opened the first document inside it and she began. The clients came first, every active account, logged by name, start date, contract value, and the name of the person at that company who actually called Clara when something needed solving. Not Derek, not the general inbox. Clara. She knew these relationships the way you know the layout of a house you have lived in for years. Without looking, without thinking, purely by feel. Thorough in the way that looked effortless, only because she had been practicing thoroughness her entire professional life. midnight, before she closed the laptop that first night. Derek was asleep by the time she carried it to the bottom of her side of the wardrobe. Behind the winter boots she wouldn't need for another month, she went to bed. Slept 6 hours. Woke before the alarm, made coffee, and was at her desk at Meridian by 7:45, doing her job with the same quality and care she had always brought to it. Nothing changed on the outside. Everything had changed on the inside. Over the following weeks, the folder grew with a quiet consistency that mirrored Clara herself. Vendor contracts, every active agreement, the renewal dates, the contact names, the specific terms she had personally negotiated, process documentation, the systems she had built over 5 years, written out in enough detail that someone starting from scratch could follow them. Staff notes, not gossip, not grievances. Just clear records of who had been hired when, what their roles actually involved versus what their job descriptions said, which relationships were load-bearing and which were ceremonial. Night after night in the blue chair. After the house went quiet, Sunday mornings before Derek woke up, laptop open on the kitchen table with her second cup of coffee, sunlight coming through the window above the sink. Working with the methodical patience of someone who understands that the thing they are building does not need to be finished quickly. Completely is the only way it needs to be finished. November passed. Then December. Holiday client dinners, end-of-year reporting, the staff gifts Clara organized and wrapped, and had delivered with handwritten cards she signed with both their names. January came with its particular gray weight. February arrived fast and cold, the kind of cold that makes Naperville feel very far from anywhere warm. 17 documents in that folder by then, each one a piece of something Derek had never thought to understand, because he had never needed to. Clara had always been there. Clara had always known. The infrastructure of that company lived so completely inside her head and her habits that it had never needed to exist anywhere else. Until now, worth stating clearly, this was not sabotage. Nothing she documented was intended to damage Meridian or harm its clients or disadvantage Derek in ways that crossed a legal or ethical line. She was not dismantling anything, making visible what had always been invisible, recording for the first time the true shape of what she had built. Think of it this way: an architect does not own the building, but they own the drawings. Clara was making her drawings. No fixed plan yet, no timeline, no clear image of what came after. Just the folder growing steadily, and the blue chair, and the spare room, and the feeling that had settled into her bones since that October morning on Michigan Avenue, quiet and permanent and precise as a key turning in a lock. That folder, remember it. You are going to want to. February 28, 2020 arrived the way most significant days do. Without announcement, dressed as ordinary. A full day at Meridian, a vendor escalation handled that should have been Derek's responsibility, the drive home on Route 59, and pasta made for dinner because it was fast and she was tired in the specific way that accumulates over years rather than hours. Derek came home at 7:50. Good mood. He had taken a prospective client to lunch at a steakhouse on Wacker Drive, and the conversation had gone well, and he carried that energy into the kitchen the way he always did, expansive, a little loud, filling the room with the momentum of his own day. He talked about the lunch. He talked about the client. A glass of wine poured, leaning against the counter, talking about what the new account could mean for Meridian's trajectory in the second half of the year. Clara listened. She served the pasta. At the kitchen table they ate, the Cedar Avenue table, sanded smooth. Coffee ring long since faded, And for the first 40 minutes, the conversation stayed on the surface of things. Derek's lunch, a staff situation he'd heard about secondhand, a podcast he'd started listening to on his commute. Clara contributed where she could, and stayed quiet where she couldn't, and watched the clock on the microwave move from 8 to 8:30 to 9 without making a decision. Then she made one. Her fork went down. Not dramatically, just parallel to the plate, the way someone does when they are shifting from one kind of attention to another. Derek was mid-sentence. He noticed the fork. He stopped, she said. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it." To his credit, he put the wine down. She told him she felt erased, that word specifically, because it was the most accurate one, and she had always valued accuracy above comfort. She told him that for the past several years, she had watched herself disappear from the story of the company she helped build, from meetings, from introductions, from the article, from the presentation in October that she had fact-checked and restructured and stayed up until midnight preparing, the presentation in which he had spoken for 41 minutes without saying her name. No raised voice. No tears, the steady, unhurried precision of someone who has been composing this moment for a long time and has decided that it deserves to be said correctly. Derek listened. She gave him that. He sat still and he listened, and for a moment, maybe 3 or 4 seconds at the end of her last sentence, she saw something move across his face that looked almost like recognition. Then it passed. He said he hadn't realized. He said the presentation was about the business, not personal history. He said she knew how much he valued everything she did, that it went without saying, that she was being. He paused here, chose his word carefully, sensitive. That word landed in the room like something dropped from a height, sensitive. Clara looked at him for a long moment. The kitchen was very quiet. The microwave clock read 9:14. On the shelf behind Derek's left shoulder, exactly where it had always been, sat the yellow legal pad from 2014, the one she had used to draft the first client proposal, the one she had kept without fully knowing why, the one that had traveled from the old house to this one inside a moving box labeled miscellaneous. She looked at the legal pad. She looked back at Derek quietly. She asked what he thought her role in Meridian actually was. He answered without hesitating. Operations, support, the infrastructure that let him focus on growth and vision and client relationships. Important, he said, essential, even, but different. There was a difference, he explained, between the people who build the foundation and the people who build the building. Both matter, but only one of them, when the building is finished, gets to put their name on the front, gently delivered. That was almost the worst part, not the cruelty that announces itself. The cruelty that believes itself to be honest. The particular kind deployed by a man explaining to a woman the terms of her own life, as though she has not been living inside them and noticing everything. Clara said nothing for a moment. Outside, a car passed on the street. The refrigerator made its small sound. The microwave clock ticked to 9:15. She said, "I built the foundation and the building. I just never put my name on either one." Derek opened his mouth. She stood up, his plate and hers, carried to the sink. She began washing them with the same quiet efficiency she brought to everything. Derek sat at the table. He said her name once. She did not turn around. He said something about not meaning it that way, about being under pressure, about the conversation not needing to be this big. She kept washing. When the plates were done, she dried her hands on the dish towel, folded it over the oven handle exactly as she always did, and told him she was going to bed. Down the hall she walked, not slamming the door. On the edge of the bed in the dark she sat and thought about the yellow legal pad on the shelf. She thought about 6 years. She thought about the folder with 17 documents sitting inside her personal laptop at the bottom of the wardrobe, 18 now. Walking away from that table, she had already known exactly what to add. That night brought little sleep, not because of upset, not the kind that produces crying or restlessness or the particular insomnia that comes from unresolved emotion. Unresolved was exactly what she was not. lying in the dark on her side of the bed, listening to Derek's breathing slow and deepen beside her, thinking with a clarity so complete it almost felt like a physical sensation. By 3 a.m. she had a list, not written down, not yet, just held in her mind with the precision she had always used to hold things that mattered, clean, ordered, every item in its right place, what she needed to know, who she needed to call, what the sequence had to be, and why the sequence mattered, because Clara understood instinctively that the difference between a decision and a good decision is almost always the order in which things happen. March 1st was a Sunday, before the alarm. Before Derek, before the house made any of its small morning sounds, she woke at 6. Coffee made in the kitchen without turning on the overhead light, standing at the window above the sink watching the backyard come slowly visible in the gray early dark, giving herself until the cup was empty to feel whatever needed to be felt. She felt it. Then she rinsed the mug, set it on the rack, and went to the blue chair. The first call she made was not to an attorney. Renata came first. Renata Okafor had been Clara's closest friend since they had worked together at the Chicago agency in 2009. Sharp, direct, and constitutionally incapable of telling Clara what she wanted to hear instead of what was true, which was precisely why Clara had kept her close for 11 years and precisely why she was the right first call. Renata had watched this situation develop from a careful distance. She had asked questions Clara wasn't ready to answer as far back as 2017. She had never pushed. She had simply remained available, which is the most useful thing a person can be to someone who is not yet ready to move. Ready now. The call lasted 40 minutes. 3 things Renata said that mattered. I've been waiting for this call. And you already know what you need to do. You just need someone to sit with you while you say it out loud. And at the end, very quietly, whatever you decide, I'm already in your corner. That afternoon, Clara drove to Renata's house. Yellow walls, the smell of something baked earlier. Afternoon light coming in low and warm through the west window. There they sat in Renata's kitchen, and Clara said out loud, for the first time, the full shape of what she was considering. Not just leaving the marriage, leaving Meridian, starting her own firm, taking with her what was legally and ethically hers, and building something that had her name on the door. Saying it out loud made it real in a way the blue chair had not. Renata poured more coffee. Not alarmed, not surprised, not even particularly worried. She looked at Clara the way people look at someone who has finally arrived somewhere they should have reached a long time ago. The attorney came next. Patricia Wynn had an office on Jefferson Avenue, 3rd floor, the kind of space that managed to be both efficient and calming. Pale walls, natural light. A desk completely clear except for whatever case was currently in front of her. Research rather than referral had led Clara there, which was characteristic. She wanted someone she had chosen herself, not someone connected to any mutual circle. March 5th brought the first meeting, methodical, precise, completely without drama. Patricia suited Clara exactly. They discussed the business structure, Meridian's founding documents, Clara's legal standing as co-founder, what she was entitled to, what a clean exit looked like versus a contested one, and what steps Clara needed to take in what order to protect herself without triggering anything premature. Patricia used the word premature 3 times in that first meeting. Clara understood what she meant each time. Not yet, but soon. And in the right sequence, a business advisor followed the following week. Daniel Cho had consulted for several small agencies in the Chicago area and came recommended by Patricia. Younger than Clara expected, early 30s, quiet. The kind of person who listened more than he spoke and asked questions that were better than most people's answers. She walked him through the folder, all 18 documents. He read them with a focused attention that told her, before he said a single word, that what she had built was exactly as substantial as she believed. After 40 minutes, he looked up and said, "You didn't just support this company. You are this company's operational infrastructure. These systems don't exist without you. These relationships don't transfer without you." "Do you understand what that means?" She said she was beginning to. He said she should begin faster. Strange double quality, those 3 weeks. Externally unchanged, internally in constant motion. Every day to meridian. Work held to the same standard as always. Emails answered, clients managed, staff supervised. Problem solved in the steady, reliable stream they always had. Nobody noticed anything. That was not surprising. They had never noticed the work when it was effortless. They were not going to notice the effort now that it was intentional. By March 21st, the plan was complete. Not approximate, not mostly done. Complete. Every step mapped, every contingency considered, every document in the folder reviewed by both Patricia and Daniel and confirmed as solid. That Saturday night, she sat in the blue chair with the laptop open and the folder on the screen and read through all 18 documents one final time. Then she closed the laptop, both hands flat on her knees. She thought about the kitchen table, the yellow legal pad, the Navy conference room, the Marriott ballroom, the 41 minutes. Tomorrow was Sunday. The office would be empty. 7 a.m. Sunday morning. Same coffee as always. Same amount of grounds, same mug, same window above the sink. Same backyard going from dark to gray to the particular pale color of a March morning in Naperville that never quite decides if it wants to be winter or something else. Standing there the same way she always stood there. From the hallway, if Derek had walked past, nothing would have looked different. He didn't walk past, still asleep. The night before, she had laid out what she needed. A single cardboard box, the kind that copy paper comes in. Sturdy and plain, sitting open on the floor of the blue chair room with 3 items already inside it. Her personal desk planner, a framed photograph of her and Renata taken at a work event in 2016. A small succulent she had brought from home 2 years ago and placed on her office windowsill because she liked having something alive in the room. Those were hers. Everything else at Meridian was either the company's or Derek's. The distinction was understood completely. Patricia had been precise about it. What was personal, what was professional, what constituted her share of jointly held assets. All of it mapped and handled through the proper channels in the proper sequence. This morning was not about taking. It was about collecting what had always been hers and leaving everything else exactly where it stood. Quickly she dressed. Dark jeans, a white shirt, the gray blazer she had worn to the Marriott in October. That choice was not accidental. To Elm Street she drove with the empty box on the passenger seat and the radio off, and the morning still early enough that the road was mostly clear. She knew the security code, had set it, back in 2016, and changed it twice since then when staff turnover made that sensible. Through the side entrance she let herself in, the one that opened directly onto the corridor, leading to her office, rather than through the main reception area. Weekends gave the building a different quality, quieter than a weekday, as though the absence of people changed not just the sound but the air itself. Carpet and coffee residue, and the faint trace of the cleaning products the overnight team used on Saturdays. She knew this smell the way she knew everything about this building, completely, without having to think about it. Third door on the left. Her office, 11 minutes to collect what was hers. The planner and the photograph and the succulent, already in the box. A cardigan from the hook behind the door. 2 books from the shelf that she had brought from home. A ceramic mug with a chip on the handle that Derek had given her 4 years ago for her birthday. She considered it, turned it in her hands, then placed it back on the shelf. She left the mug. Next was Derek's office, not to take anything but to leave something. The envelope she had prepared on Thursday night, sealed and addressed in her handwriting. His full name, Derek James Merritt, written out because the moment deserved that formality. Center of his desk it went, parallel to the edge, exactly straight. A moment standing in his office, good office, large windows, the city visible at a distance, the kind of space that communicates authority and arrival. She had helped design it in 2016. She had argued for the bigger desk, the better chair, The shelving unit along the east wall that held the awards and the framed press coverage and the photograph from the investor presentation in October. Derek at the podium. Projector screen behind him. The Marriott ballroom wide and full and blue-carpeted. She was not in the photograph. She turned away from it. Through the office one final time she walked. Not sentimentally. She was not that kind of person. And this was not that kind of morning. The way you walk through a house before handing back the keys. Making sure nothing was missed. Making sure everything that needed to be in its right place was in its right place. The Navy conference room. She paused at the doorway. Blue walls, exactly the color she had chosen in 2016. Still right. Still doing exactly what she had intended. Commanding. Calming. The kind of room where decisions got made. Many decisions had been made in that room. Good ones, mostly. One more now. She pulled the door shut behind her and walked to the side exit and pushed it open and stepped out into the Meridian Creative Group parking lot at 4:17 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon in March. Cold air. The kind more honest than cruel, clean and direct, and without any interest in how you feel about it. Standing beside her car, she looked up at the building. The lights were on in the main corridor, the automatic ones that ran on a timer, and they made the windows glow a pale institutional yellow against the gray afternoon sky. She had turned those lights on for the first time in 2016. 30 seconds she stood there. Exactly 30, she counted, without meaning to, because counting was what her mind did when it needed to stay steady. The box was in her arms. The building was lit. The parking lot was empty except for her car and the cold and the particular silence of a Sunday in a business district when all the business has stopped. Then she put the box in the trunk, into the car she got. When she pulled out of the lot, she did not look back at the building. Not because she was being deliberate about it. Not because she had decided that looking back meant something she didn't want it to mean. She just didn't need to. Everything there was to see had already been seen. Home to Naperville she drove, made dinner for one for the first time in 9 years, and sat at the kitchen table with the yellow legal pad and wrote 3 words at the top of a clean page. Not what comes next, not a plan or a timeline or a list of action items. Just 3 words that she needed to see written in her own handwriting, solid and real on the page in front of her. I am ready, Monday morning, March 23rd. 8:52 a.m. In order. Without mercy. Derek Merritt arrived at the Meridian Creative Group office using his key. He deactivated the alarm with the code he had asked Clara to text him 2 years ago, because he could never remember it. Coffee in the break room. Phone checked. Settled at his desk with the particular comfortable confidence of a man who believes the ground beneath him is solid. The envelope was where Clara had left it to Kenter of the desk. Parallel to the edge. His full name in her handwriting. He read it twice. Then he sat very still for 4 minutes, documented, because his 9 a.m. call with a client started late and the client noted it. And then he picked up his phone and called Clara's number. She did not answer. Again at 9:17. Again at 10:40. A text at 11. We need to talk. Another at 2:15. Clara, please. She read both. She responded to neither. At that precise moment, she was sitting in the blue chair in the spare room in Naperville, reviewing the final version of her business registration documents with Patricia Wynn on a video call, her personal laptop open. The folder with 18 documents minimized in the bottom corner of the screen. Already building the next thing. Derek, meanwhile, was discovering the first thing. The Meridian inbox, the general client-facing address that Clara had managed every single day for 6 years, had 43 unread messages by noon on Monday. Months since Derek had checked it. No reason to. Clara checked it. Clara triaged it. Clara responded to the routine ones, flagged the important ones, and handled the urgent ones before they became problems. The system was so clean and so consistent that its existence had become invisible, which is precisely what happens to all good systems run by people nobody thinks to credit. He opened the inbox at 12:17. He stared at it for a while. By end of day Monday, he had responded to 6 of the 43 messages. 3 of those responses were incomplete. One contained an error about a project deadline that would need correcting the following morning. The office he left at 7:15, later than usual, carrying the low-grade tension of a man who has encountered a problem he does not yet have the vocabulary to describe. Wednesday arrived as day 3. A vendor called at 9 a.m. about a contract renewal due on April 1st. The contract was for the project management software Meridian, used across all 31 active client accounts. The software Clara had selected in 2017, negotiated the pricing on, and set up with a renewal reminder she had added to her own personal calendar, rather than the shared company one, because she had learned by then not to trust that shared calendars got checked. The reminder was on her personal calendar. Her personal calendar was on her personal phone. Her personal phone was in Naperville. The vendor spoke with a junior account manager named Tyler, who had been at Meridian for 8 months and understood the software well enough to use it and not at all well enough to discuss contract terms. Tyler took a message. The message sat on Derek's desk until 11. Derek called the vendor back and spent 22 minutes trying to locate the existing contract terms in a filing system he had never been required to learn, because Clara had always known where everything was. He did not find the contract that day. Thursday morning brought it, in a folder labeled with Clara's characteristic and now somewhat pointed precision, vendor agreements, active. There the entire time. Exactly where it should have been. Filed by a person who understood that the value of a system is that it works even when the person who built it is no longer present, except that it only works if someone knows to look. Day 5 was a Friday. Marcus Webb called at 10:15 a.m. Regional Director of Hartwell Health, Meridian's largest account, a relationship that had begun in 2017 when Clara had cold called their marketing department, secured a 30-minute meeting, prepared a proposal overnight, and closed the retainer within 2 weeks. 3 years Marcus had worked with Clara exclusively. She knew his team, his quarterly priorities, his communication preferences, and the name of his assistant, who screened his calls. He asked for Clara. Derek told him Clara had moved on to other opportunities. That exact phrase, moved on to other opportunities. The corporate one. The smooth one, the phrase designed to signal professionalism while communicating nothing. Marcus paused for a moment that lasted slightly too long. Then he asked who would be handling the Hartwell account going forward. Derek said he would be personally overseeing all key accounts during the transition. Marcus said he would like a transition briefing. Of course, Derek said. Absolutely, he would get something scheduled. Hartwell, transition call. Went onto a post-it note, stuck to the monitor. Then he sat back in his chair and looked at the open-plan floor through his office window. The desks, the screens, the 23 people who had come to work that morning, expecting the infrastructure beneath them to function the way it always had. He told himself they would figure it out. Quickly, to no one, in an empty office on a Friday afternoon. The thing about saying something to no one is that no one can agree with you. The post-it stayed on the monitor all weekend. Nobody scheduled the call. Still on the monitor when April arrived, that post-it note. Derek had written Hartwell, transition call, on a Friday afternoon in March and had looked at it every morning since without converting it into an action. Not unusual behavior for a person who has spent 6 years working beside someone who converted everything into action automatically. The muscle had not developed because it had never needed to. Clara had always been the one who took the note off the monitor and made it real. The note stayed. Monday, April 2nd brought 3 things before 10 a.m. A client email requiring a detailed response about campaign performance data that lived in a reporting system Derek had never logged into. A staff question about a vendor invoice that needed authorization against a budget spreadsheet nobody could locate. And a phone call from Sandra Obi, marketing lead at Crestline Properties, asking, politely, professionally, with the careful tone of someone who does not want to cause alarm but is already slightly alarmed, whether Clara was available for a quick catch-up. Derek handled the first two badly. The campaign email got forwarded to Tyler with a note, "Can you pull this data?" Tyler did not have access to the reporting system. He had never needed access because Clara had always pulled the data herself and formatted it into the clean weekly summaries that clients had come to expect without knowing to be grateful for them. The invoice question went unanswered until 3 p.m. when the vendor followed up directly, and Derek approved a number without checking it against anything. Sandra Obi, he called back himself. Clara had moved on to other opportunities, he told her. Sandra was quiet for a moment. The same quality of quiet Marcus Webb had produced the previous Friday, the kind that is not confusion but recognition. She asked who would be her primary contact going forward. Derek said he would personally be overseeing key relationships during the transition period. Sandra thanked him and ended the call. At 4:57 p.m., she sent an email to the general inbox asking for Clara's direct contact information. Derek did not see it until the following morning. He did not respond to it that day either. By April 7th, 5 clients had asked about Clara by name. Not all of them called. 2 sent emails. 1 asked a junior account manager directly during a routine check-in call, which put the junior account manager in the position of relaying a question. She had no authority to answer to a manager who had no good answer to give. That junior account manager, a 26-year-old named Kemi, who had been hired and trained by Clara 18 months earlier, handled it with the grace of someone who had learned professionalism from a very good teacher. She sent Derek a Slack message. "Clients are starting to ask about Clara. Should we have a standard response?" Derek replied, "Tell them we're in a transition period and everything is business as usual." Kemi read that message and said nothing. She saved it. April 9th was the Hartwell call finally scheduled. Not because the post-it had motivated Derek, but because Marcus Webb's assistant had called on April 8th to follow up, which meant the client was tracking the absence of a response, which meant the situation had moved from uncomfortable to visible. 40 minutes of preparation the morning of the call. The Hartwell account folder pulled up. The most recent project summary read through. 4 bullet points written on a notepad in handwriting that got less organized as it went down the page. 2 p.m. The call began. Marcus Webb joined with 2 members of his marketing team, professional and measured, asking questions in the precise, sequential way of someone who already suspects the answers will be unsatisfying and wants that confirmed efficiently. He asked about the Q2 content calendar. Derek said it was in development. Marcus asked who was developing it. Derek named Tyler, which was not accurate. Tyler had not been assigned anything related to the content calendar because no one had formally assigned anything to anyone since Clara left. The assignment system being one of the things that had lived entirely inside her process infrastructure. Marcus asked about the brand audit Clara had been running since January. Derek did not know about the brand audit. He covered this as smoothly as he could, which was not very smoothly. He said he would need to pull the latest documentation and get back to Marcus by end of week. Marcus said that would be fine. His tone suggested it would not be fine in the way that mattered, but that he was willing to extend a professional courtesy he was already beginning to count. 2:41 p.m. The call ended. Derek sat in the conference room for a while after the others dropped off. The speakerphone sat in the center of the table, silent. The navy walls, Clara's color, Clara's choice, held the room in their usual steady authority. Outside through the glass partition, the open-plan floor moved with the ordinary motion of a Tuesday afternoon. People at screens, conversations in low registers, the surface appearance of a functioning organization. Derek picked up his pen, brand audit. Fine docs went on to a fresh post-it, stuck next to the first one. 2 post-its now. That evening, he drove home and sat in his car in the driveway for 6 minutes before going inside. The house was exactly as he had left it that morning. Quiet, orderly, every surface clean. Clara had kept it that way for 9 years, and the habits of a well-maintained home do not dissolve in 3 weeks. The dishes were still stacked correctly. The towels were still folded, but the succulent was gone from the kitchen windowsill. He noticed that for the first time. Standing in the kitchen looking at the empty windowsill for a long moment, he noticed. Then he ordered takeout and ate it alone at the kitchen table, and did not think about what the empty windowsill meant. Because thinking about what it meant would have required him to think about a great many other things in sequence. And Derek Merritt had never been comfortable with sequences he had not initiated himself. The brand audit documentation was never found. Clara had taken the only complete version with her, in the folder. The one with 18 documents, 19 now. Here is the thing about infrastructure. You do not notice it until it fails. Not the pipes beneath the street, not the load-bearing wall inside the house. Not the person who has been quietly holding the weight of an organization for 6 years, while everyone around her focused on the parts that were visible. Infrastructure does not announce itself. It does not ask for recognition. Day after day, it simply functions, with a consistency so complete that its presence becomes indistinguishable from the air itself. And then it stops. And then you notice, May 4th, 2020 was a Monday, at 9:17 a.m. The project management software that Meridian used across all 31 active client accounts stopped working. Not partially, completely. Every login across every device returned the same error message, account suspended due to non-payment. The vendor had sent 4 notices between March 15th and April 28th, each one going to an email address Clara had set up specifically for vendor communications, an address she had monitored daily for 3 years, and which had not been checked once since March 22nd, because nobody at Meridian knew it existed. Tyler discovered the lockout at 9:17. A Slack message went to Derek at 9:19. Derek called the vendor at 9:44. Reinstatement required payment of the outstanding invoice plus a reactivation fee. Authorized at 10:15. The software was back online by 11:30. 2 hours and 13 minutes of complete operational paralysis across every active client account. And when the system came back up, there were 11 client messages in the general inbox asking what was happening. 3 of them marked urgent, one of them from Marcus Webb's assistant at Hartwell Health, noting that the Hartwell team had lost access to their shared project dashboard, and requesting an immediate explanation. Derek responded to Marcus Webb's assistant personally. Technical difficulties. Twice in 4 sentences he used that phrase. Marcus Webb read the response, forwarded it to his internal team with no comment, and made a note in his calendar for the following Monday. The note said, "Decision re-Meridian." Nobody at Meridian knew about that note. Clara did not know about it either. She was not watching. She had not set up any system to monitor Meridian's situation, had not asked Renata or anyone else to report back, had not searched the company name or Derek's name online since the day she left. She was not interested in the collapse. She was interested in the construction. CMG Advisory had been registered on April 6th. By May 4th, the same day the project management software went dark at Meridian, Clara had 2 confirmed clients, a third in late-stage conversation. A clean website she had built herself over a weekend, using a platform she had never used before, and mastered in the way she mastered everything, and a home office that now had yellow curtains because she had decided, in the deliberate way she decided things, that the space where she worked should feel like hers. It did, back on Elm Street. May continued its quiet documentation of consequences. A compliance reporting deadline for a healthcare-adjacent client passed on May 19th without the required deliverable. The deliverable had been on Clara's master project tracker, a document she had built and maintained, and which had transferred to her personal records as part of the folder, its Meridian copy existing as a shared file that required her login credentials to edit, and which had been sitting locked and unupdated since March 22nd. The client sent a formal written notice on May 21st. Derek spent an afternoon with the client on the phone, absorbed the conversation with the professional composure of a man who has had a great deal of practice absorbing difficult conversations, and promised resolution within 5 business days. It took 11. June arrived with the particular warmth of a Chicago area early summer that feels like a reward for surviving winter, and at Meridian it went largely unappreciated. On June 3rd, Kemi submitted her resignation, 2 weeks' notice given as required. Her resignation letter was professional and gracious and said nothing specific about her reasons for leaving, which was itself specific. A new position at a boutique agency in Evanston waited. She had applied in April. Not a word to anyone at Meridian while she was looking. She had told Clara. Clara had written her a reference letter on April 14th, sent from her personal email, addressed to the hiring manager at the Evanston agency. 3 paragraphs of the most precise and generous professional endorsement Kemi had ever received. She had framed it and put it on her desk at the new job. 9 days after Kemi's resignation on June 12th, Sam handed in his notice. At Meridian since 2015, Sam was the project coordinator Clara had hired in the company's first year of real growth, the one who had said in his first week that Meridian felt more organized than companies 10 times its size. With quiet attention, he had watched the organization change since March, the attention of someone who understood, better than most, exactly what had changed and why. His resignation letter was 4 sentences. The last one said, "I have learned a great deal during my time at Meridian, and I am grateful for the opportunities this role provided." He did not say who had provided them, but he knew. At the window of his office on the afternoon of June 12th, Derek stood and looked at the open-plan floor, Sam's desk already cleared. Kemi still holding the ghost of her presence, a coffee mug, a sticky note in her handwriting, a small plant she had forgotten to take. 2 desks, 2 of the most capable people in the building, both empty within 9 days of each other. The office felt different, not louder, not more chaotic, just thinner, the way a room feels when something structural has been quietly removed and the walls have not yet registered the change. Derek turned from the window. At his desk he sat. He looked at the 2 post-it notes on his monitor. Then he added a third, hiring, urgent. 3 post-its now. The brand audit documentation was still missing. The Hartwell decision note was still in Marcus Webb's calendar. In a home office in Naperville with yellow curtains and a clean desk and a door with her name on the lease, Clara Merritt was getting on a call with her 3rd client. She did not know about the post-its. She would not have been surprised. While Meridian counted post-it notes, Clara counted something else entirely: clients, hours. The particular satisfaction of work that has your name on it from the first line to the last. CMG Advisory. Clara Merritt Group Advisory. 3 words she had turned over in her mind for 2 weeks before committing to them. 3 words that put her name first for the first time in 6 years. Had opened for business on April 6th with no fanfare, no LinkedIn announcement, no press release, just a clean website and a phone that was hers. Joyce Chen found her first. Regional healthcare communications firm based in Oak Park. Joyce was their marketing director, a careful woman who had worked adjacent to Meridian for 2 years and had watched Clara operate from a professional distance long enough to understand what she was actually watching. When the news traveled, quietly, through the small professional network that connects people who pay attention, that Clara had started her own firm, Joyce called within a week. The call lasted 20 minutes. Joyce signed a 6-month retainer on April 14th. The second client came through Renata, who had mentioned Clara's new firm to a contact at a mid-sized event production company in the west suburbs that had been struggling with operational consistency for the better part of a year. Over video, Clara met with them. It was April 2020, and the world had recently rearranged itself around screens, and spent the first 30 minutes asking questions, and the second 30 minutes outlining exactly what she had heard and what she would do about it. They signed the following Monday. Sandra Obi was the 3rd client, the same Sandra Obi who had called Meridian on April 2nd asking for Clara. been told Clara had moved on to other opportunities, and then sent an email to the general inbox requesting Clara's direct contact information. An email Derek had not answered. Sandra had found Clara's new website herself, through the kind of determined professional searching that people do when they have worked with someone exceptional and are not willing to simply accept that the relationship is over. She called on May 2nd. Clara answered on the second ring. By the end of May, CMG Advisory had 3 retainer clients and a 4th in serious conversation. The revenue was not yet what it would become, but real and growing and carrying her name on every invoice, every deliverable, every email footer. From the home office with the yellow curtains she worked, a specific shade chosen from a paint swatch fan on a Sunday afternoon in late March, holding each option up to the window light until she found the one that made the room feel like morning even at 4 p.m. She found it, 2 yards of fabric bought, the curtains made herself on a Saturday. Something she had not done since before Meridian, since before the years when her weekends had been quietly absorbed by the company's needs and the household's demands and Derek's calendar and the 100 small tasks that fill a life lived mostly in service of other people's priorities. She still had the sewing machine. She had kept it in a closet for 6 years, waiting. Clean without being cold, the home office became the place she had always wanted a workspace to be. Organized in the way that reflects the mind of the person doing the organizing rather than the aesthetic preferences of a shared space. Her books on the shelves, her system on the computer, her name on the door. Not literally. Not yet, but in every way that mattered before the literal version catches up. She slept 8 hours, worth saying plainly, because it had not been true for a very long time. The years of midnight work in the blue chair, the early mornings at the kitchen table, the accumulated deficit of rest that builds inside a person who is always the last one to stop. That deficit was clearing, not all at once, gradually, the way genuine recovery always happens, in small increments that don't feel significant until one morning you wake up and realize you cannot remember the last time you were tired in that particular bone-deep way. Mid-May brought that morning. She noticed it the way she noticed most things, quietly, precisely, without making it larger than it was. Coffee made, standing at the window. The thought, I slept well again. Then she went to work. On Tuesday and Thursday mornings, the Washington Street coffee shop became her office away from the office. A corner table by the window, the same order every time. Black coffee, the almond pastry she allowed herself without negotiation, and 2 hours of focused work before her first call of the day. The staff learned her name within 2 weeks, not because she introduced herself formally, but because she was consistent, which is how people who pay attention always learn your name. She was a regular. She had not been a regular anywhere in years. A particular kind of joy is easy to miss because it does not announce itself. It does not arrive with the dramatic relief of a crisis resolved or the sharp pleasure of a victory claimed. It arrives in the morning, in the light through yellow curtains, in the weight of a coffee cup that is yours, in the work that has your name on it, in the 8 hours of sleep that nobody interrupted with their needs. Ordinary life is how it arrives. Except that for Clara, after 6 years, ordinary life felt like the most extraordinary thing imaginable. This is the part of the story they never show you. Not the battle, not the breakdown, not the dramatic confrontation or the legal filing, or the moment someone finally says the right thing in the right room. The part after, Tuesday morning at the corner table. The yellow curtains, the client who calls and asks for you by name and means it. The work that is entirely, irrevocably, visibly yours. That part, the part where she was fine, more than fine. For the first time in longer than she could precisely calculate, completely and quietly, and thoroughly herself, and Derek Merritt was adding post-its to his monitor, and Clara Merritt was adding clients to her roster, and the distance between those two facts was not a coincidence. It was a conclusion. The first call came on a Wednesday, July 8, 2020. Clara was at the corner table on Washington Street. Black coffee, almond pastry, Second hour of focused work before her 10 a.m. client call. Her phone lit up on the table beside her laptop. She saw the name. She looked at it for the length of one full breath. Then she turned the phone face down and finished the paragraph she was writing. At 11:40, she called him back. After her client call ended, not because she owed him a call back, because she had decided, sometime in the blue chair during those 3 weeks of planning in March, that when this moment came, she would not be the person who avoided it. Avoidance was not her style. It never had been. She would engage, clearly and on her own terms, and she would not mistake composure for weakness or silence for consent. He answered before the first ring finished. Her name. Said the way people say a name when they have been waiting to say it, with a relief that has nowhere to go, because the situation that produced the relief has not actually been resolved. He said he had been thinking. He said things at Meridian were complicated right now, and he needed to talk through some operational questions, just professional. Just a conversation between two people who understood the business better than anyone else. Just professional. Clara listened without interrupting. For 4 minutes he talked about project management gaps, client communication, the brand audit documentation that seemed to have gone missing, a compliance situation with a healthcare client that needed someone with her particular expertise to untangle. Measured and specific and professional in exactly the way a person is when they have rehearsed being measured and specific and professional and are hoping the rehearsal doesn't show. It showed. She told him she would think about it. She did not think about it. She had already thought about everything that needed thinking. What she was doing when she said she would think about it was giving him a clean exit from the call, so that neither of them had to perform a longer version of this conversation than was necessary. Even now, managing the interaction with a precision and consideration he had long since stopped deserving. He called again on July 11th, different this call. The professional framing was still there but thinner, the way a coat of paint looks when it has been applied over something that was not properly prepared. He said he missed working with her. He said Meridian was not the same without her, which was objectively true in ways he was only beginning to understand the full dimensions of. He said she had always been the person who made everything make sense. The words landed, not because they healed anything, because they arrived 3 years too late to be medicine and had therefore become something else entirely, the kind of words that confirm rather than comfort, that prove the diagnosis rather than treat the condition. He saw her now. She had needed him to see her in 2016, in 2017 in the Navy conference room, in the Marriott Ballroom on October 14, 2019, with the blue carpet and the projector light and 41 minutes of her life narrated without her name. In July 2020, he finally saw her. She noted it the way she noted most things. The third contact was not a call, July 17th, a Friday afternoon. In her home office, Clara was, yellow curtains catching the late light, on the back end of a client deliverable she wanted finished before the weekend. A car in the driveway. She recognized the sound of it. 6 years of the same engine in the same driveway produces a recognition that does not disappear quickly, regardless of what you would prefer. She did not go to the window. The doorbell rang once, her document saved, her laptop closed. She walked to the front door and opened it with the same composure she had been carrying since March, not performed, not effortful. Simply the natural bearing of a woman who has made her decisions and is no longer afraid of their consequences. Derek stood on the doorstep, tired in a way that was new, not the tiredness of a busy man who needs a weekend, the deeper kind. The kind that accumulates when the systems that have been holding your life together reveal themselves to have been someone else's systems all along. And you have spent 4 months trying to replicate them without the knowledge or the history or the particular intelligence that built them in the first place. Standing on that doorstep, he looked like a man who had recently learned something expensive. He said he wanted to talk, Not about Meridian, not about the business, not about operational gaps or missing documentation. About them. About what he had not said in the right rooms at the right times. About the board presentation and the article and the conference room meeting in the summer of 2016, where he had walked in late and redirected her agenda without noticing that she had prepared for 40 minutes the night before. He remembered the agenda. That surprised her. In the doorway she stood, not inviting him in, not closing the door, and she looked at him for a long moment with the clear, unhurried attention she had always given to things that deserved to be seen properly before a decision was made about them. He almost sounded like the man she had married, the one from 2011, before Meridian, before the Elm Street office, before the article and the Marriott and the 41 minutes. The one who had carried boxes into their first apartment on a rainy October Saturday and made her laugh in the stairwell and seemed, then, like someone who understood the value of what was right in front of him. Almost. She told him she would meet him for coffee. Washington Street. Tuesday. 10 a.m. The door she closed. Back to her desk and the deliverable she finished. Then she sat in the yellow light of the late Friday afternoon, and she thought about what she would say on Tuesday. Not with anger. Not with rehearsed speeches or accumulated grievances lined up like evidence for a jury, but with the same precision she brought to everything, the precise, complete, permanent truth of what had happened and what it had cost and what she was and was not willing to do next. She already knew the answer. She had known it since March. Tuesday was just where she would say it out loud. All of this, the calls and the doorstep and the almost, is what happens when a person finally understands the value of something they spent years not seeing. They see it too late. Always, always too late. She arrived first. Of course she did. She had always arrived first. To meetings, to conversations, to the full understanding of situations that others were still catching up to. The corner table by the window was available, which she had expected because she had chosen Tuesday at 10 a.m., specifically knowing the morning rush would have cleared and the lunch crowd would not yet have arrived. She ordered her coffee. She ordered the almond pastry. Nothing opened on her laptop. Nothing scrolled on her phone. She simply sat and waited. Derek arrived at 10:11, 7 minutes late, which was not unusual, and which she noted without assigning it meaning beyond what it was. A habit, not a statement. Better than he had looked on the doorstep on Friday. He had slept, or tried to. The blue shirt she had given him 2 birthdays ago he was wearing, which may or may not have been intentional, and which she decided, in the half-second she registered it, not to think about further. He ordered coffee at the counter. He carried it to the table. He sat down across from her, and for a moment neither of them said anything, and the coffee shop moved around them with its ordinary Tuesday morning life. The espresso machine, the low conversation of 2 women at the table near the door, the sound of rain beginning outside against the window. She had not checked the forecast. Rain had not been in her plan. It didn't matter. He said, "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "Of course." Then he began. Prepared. She could tell. Not in the rehearsed way of the July 8th phone call, but in the genuine way of someone who has spent 2 weeks sitting with something difficult and has decided it deserves to be said properly. He talked about the board presentation. He used the word inexcusable, which was the right word, and he used it without qualification or caveat, which was the right way to use it. He talked about the article. He talked about the years of introductions where he had described her as his operations person, while she stood beside him knowing every client relationship, every system, every number in every room. He said he had not understood what he was doing. He said he understood now. She listened to all of it. Full attention given to things that deserved to be heard completely before she responded. She had always believed that the quality of a response depends entirely on the quality of the listening that precedes it. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Outside, the rain was steady now, the Washington Street sidewalk darkening in patches. A woman with a yellow umbrella passing the window in the particular unhurried way of someone who has accepted the rain and decided to move through it rather than fight it. Clara watched her for just a second. Then she looked at Derek. She told him she appreciated what he had said. Not as a courtesy, not as the preamble to a rejection, but as a genuine acknowledgement that the words were real and that real words, even late ones, are worth receiving. She told him she had spent a great deal of time, since March, understanding the full shape of what their years together had actually looked like. Not the surface of it, the revenue and the client list and the Elm Street office and the life they had built in Naperville, but the architecture beneath it. Who had drawn the plans? Who had laid the foundation? Who had shown up every day and held the weight of two organizations simultaneously, while one of them got the byline? All of this said without raising her voice. A brief departure from the narrator's chair is necessary. Because what Clara said next is the part that I have thought about most. Not the boardroom, not the parking lot, not even the 41 minutes. This, a corner table on Washington Street on a rainy Tuesday morning. Two people who had built something real together sitting across from each other at the end of it. And the woman who had been made invisible choosing, with complete deliberateness, to be seen. She told him she was not coming back to Meridian. She told him she was not coming back to the marriage. She told him that the version of her life in which she did the work, and he received the credit, had closed on March 22nd, when she walked out of the Elm Street office with a cardboard box and stood in the parking lot for 30 seconds and did not look back. She told him that she did not blame him with the hot, consuming anger that needs somewhere to go. She had moved past that. What she felt now was something cleaner, a clear-eyed understanding of what had happened, and a complete absence of interest in repeating it. Then she said the thing she had been composing, without knowing she was composing it. Since October 14, 2019, in a Marriott ballroom on Michigan Avenue, she said, "You needed me to be invisible to feel significant. I need to never be invisible again." There is no version of us where both of those things are true at the same time. Derek did not respond immediately. The espresso machine ran. The rain continued. The two women near the door laughed at something, quickly. Just once, he said her name. She picked up her coffee cup with both hands. She took one sip. She set it down. She said, "I hope Meridian recovers. I genuinely do." Then she stood, put on her coat, left enough cash on the table for both coffees and the pastry, and walked out onto Washington Street into the rain without an umbrella. She did not hurry. At her own pace she walked, in her own direction, getting a little wet and not minding at all. Behind her, through the coffee shop window, Derek Merritt sat very still at the corner table, with both hands wrapped around a cup he had stopped drinking. He stayed there for a long time. The rain kept going, and Clara Merritt walked down Washington Street in it like a woman who had finally, completely, and without any possibility of return, gotten her life back. She had said what needed saying, every word of it. Now it was done. Here is how it ended. Not with a scandal, not with a lawsuit or a public collapse or the kind of dramatic unraveling that makes for a clean story. Incrementally it ended, specifically, with a thoroughness that left no room for argument. The way most things end when the person holding them together quietly walks away. August arrived hot and certain. Marcus Webb sent the email on August 14th, a Friday, at 4:53 p.m. Addressed to Derek personally, copied to Hartwell Health's internal legal contact and their VP of operations. 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph thanked Meridian for 4 years of service. The second paragraph cited ongoing service delivery concerns, unmet deliverable timelines, and a failure to maintain adequate account continuity following recent staffing changes. The third paragraph gave 30 days notice of contract termination. Effective September 14th, Derek read it twice. He forwarded it to no one. In the Navy conference room he sat. Clara's color, Clara's walls. The deep blue she had chosen in 2016, because she had read that clients made faster decisions in rooms with strong color. And he read it a third time on his phone with the speakerphone and the long table, and the particular silence of a Friday afternoon when most of the staff had already left for the weekend. Hartwell Health represented 31% of Meridian's annual revenue. That number had been in the folder, Document 4, page 2. The client revenue breakdown Clara had compiled, with the same precision she brought to everything. Derek did not know the number from the folder. He knew it from the specific weight of it landing in his chest in an empty conference room on a hot Friday in August. 31%, gone in 3 paragraphs. Effective September 14th. His accountant he called that evening. The call lasted 40 minutes. September came and went with the quiet devastation of a month that knows what it is carrying. 2 more clients reduced their retainers. 1 paused entirely, citing budget concerns that were real but also convenient. The kind of budget concerns that materialize reliably when a client has already lost confidence and is looking for a graceful exit. Derek brought in a consultant to assess operations, a sharp woman from a firm in the Loop who spent 3 days at the Elm Street office, asking questions and reviewing processes and producing a report that was, in its careful professional language, a precise inventory of everything that was missing. She did not know about Clara specifically. She did not need to. The gaps spoke for themselves. The report used phrases like operational dependency concentration and undocumented process architecture and single-point knowledge risk. Each phrase was a translation of the same underlying fact, rendered in the bloodless language of business consulting, so that it could be absorbed without the full weight of what it actually meant, which was this. One person had known how everything worked, and that person was gone, and what remained was a company-shaped structure with nothing load-bearing left inside it. Derek read the report on a Sunday night in late September. He set it on the kitchen table. The kitchen table that was now just his kitchen table, in a house that was now just his house, quiet in a way that had taken him months to stop noticing and had recently started being simply the condition of his life. A drink made. The report and the drink and the quiet held for a long time. He did not call Clara. He had stopped calling in August, 2 weeks after the Washington Street coffee shop, when the specific clarity of what she had said had finished settling into its permanent shape, and he had understood, with the completeness that understanding sometimes requires time to achieve, that there was nothing left to call about. October 28th was a Wednesday. A competitor, a larger agency based in the River North neighborhood of Chicago, well-capitalized and acquisition-minded, made a formal offer for Meridian Creative Group's remaining client contracts, brand assets, and the Elm Street office lease, structured as an asset purchase rather than a company acquisition, which meant Derek's attorneys were precise about what it implied. They were buying the pieces, not the entity. The entity was not worth buying whole. The offer was less than 40% of what Meridian had been valued at in October 2019. That October 2019 valuation, the one Derek had presented to investors in the Marriott Ballroom on Michigan Avenue, the one that had been built on 5 years of Clara's operational infrastructure, the one he had described for 41 minutes without saying her name, had assumed the continuation of the systems and relationships and institutional knowledge that had produced it. None of that had continued. He accepted the offer on November 3rd. The signing happened in a conference room at his attorney's office on LaSalle Street. Neutral ground, not the Elm Street office, not the Navy conference room. Nowhere that had a history attached to it. Derek signed 4 documents. His attorney walked him through each one. 50 minutes the process took. When it was done, he shook hands with the acquiring firm's representative, a cordial man in his 40s who had the easy confidence of someone on the buying side of a transaction. And he collected his copy of the documents and took the elevator down to LaSalle Street. He stood on the sidewalk. November in Chicago. Cold, clean, the kind of cold that does not negotiate. He thought about the kitchen table. Cedar Avenue, 2014. The coffee ring that never came out. The yellow legal pad. The woman who had sanded the table smooth on a Saturday afternoon while he watched a football, who had built the first proposal, who had showed him how to use the filing system twice, and then a third time without complaint, who had prepared 40 minutes of agenda items for a meeting he had walked into late and redirected without noticing. He stood there for a while. Then he walked to his car. By the end of November, the Elm Street office was cleared out. The furniture sold or transferred. The awards and framed press coverage came down from the shelves in Derek's office. The Navy conference room was repainted by the building's new tenant. A pale gray, generic, the kind of color chosen specifically to have no memory. The blue accent wall gone, the accent wall Clara had chosen in 2016. The color she had researched and tested and selected because she understood that rooms shape decisions, and she wanted this room to shape the right ones. Painted over on a Tuesday afternoon in December by a person who had never known it existed. That is how things end when they are built on an invisible foundation. When the foundation leaves, you do not always see the collapse coming. You just find yourself, one ordinary Tuesday, painting over something that mattered, without ever knowing why it was that color in the first place. November 2021. 18 months since the corner table on Washington Street. 13 months since Derek signed the Meridian acquisition papers in a conference room that smelled like the paint she had chosen for the walls. 1 year since the company she had built from a kitchen table in Naperville sold for a number that would have been unthinkable if she had still been in it. She was not still in it. She was here. August 2021 brought a move. CMG Advisory out of the home office with the yellow curtains and into a real space. A suite on the second floor of a building on Green Street in downtown Naperville, 7 minutes from the house, close enough to walk on good days. Clara had negotiated the lease herself, which required no particular comment because negotiating leases was something she had always done, and would always do with the same precise competence she brought to everything. The curtains in the new office were also yellow, different shade, warmer. Chosen on a Saturday morning with the same deliberate attention she had given to the first pair, holding swatches up to the window until she found the one that made the room feel like hers. It did. 4 people made the team. Not large. Clara had not built CMG Advisory to be large. Excellent was the ambition, which is a different one and a more demanding one. There was Priya, who had left Meridian in September 2020, and called Clara 2 days after her resignation landed, who had been Clara's first hire and was now her operations lead in a way that felt less like professional succession and more like something being set right. There was a strategist named Dominic who had come through a referral from Joyce Chen at the Oak Park firm and who asked better questions in client meetings than most people asked in a year. There was a project coordinator named Lily who reminded Clara, in the best possible way, of herself at 28. Precise and thorough and quietly confident in the particular manner of someone who does not need to be the loudest person in the room to be the most indispensable. And there was Kimmy, who had saved Derek's message in April 2020. Kimmy, who had sent Clara a reference request 2 weeks later and received 3 paragraphs of the most generous professional endorsement she had ever read. Kimmy, who had spent a year at the Evanston agency building her skills and her confidence, and who had called Clara in July 2021 and asked, with the directness of someone who had learned directness from a very good teacher, whether there was a place for her at CMG Advisory. There was. There always had been. 11 clients on CMG Advisory's roster in November 2021 included Joyce Chen's Oak Park firm, Sandra Obi's Crestline Properties, the event production company from the west suburbs, and, as of September 2021, Hartwell Health. Marcus Webb had called Clara directly in August, 6 weeks after Meridian's acquisition closed, and Hartwell found themselves without an agency relationship for the first time in 4 years. The call lasted 12 minutes. Marcus said he should have called sooner. Clara said she was glad he had called at all. Hartwell signed a 12-month retainer on September 3rd, Clara had not gone looking for it. She had not positioned for it, not signaled her availability, not reached out to any former Meridian client through any channel at any point since March 2020. What had happened instead was the thing that happens when someone builds something genuinely excellent and then simply keeps building. The work speaks, the reputation travels, and the right people find their way to the right door. Her door, with her name on it, Clara Merritt, Principal, CMG Advisory, Green Street, Naperville. In front of that door, she had stood on the morning they moved in. In August 2021, for a moment that she did not photograph or post or share with anyone except Renata, who was there because Renata was always there, who had brought coffee and the particular quiet warmth of a person who has been in your corner since before you knew you needed a corner. Renata had looked at the name on the door and said, "There it is." Clara had said, "There it is." That was enough. November 2021 looked like this. A Tuesday morning, early. The Green Street office coming alive with the ordinary sounds of a functioning team. Keyboards, a phone call in the conference room. Lily asking Dominic a question about a client timeline. The coffee maker in the small kitchen, running its first cycle of the day. Clara at her desk by 7:30, the yellow curtains holding the early light. A clean screen in front of her and 11 client accounts she understood completely, and a team of 4 people she had chosen carefully and trusted fully. Her name on every deliverable, her name on the door. Her name spoken first in every introduction, every meeting, every room she walked into. Not because she demanded it, but because she had built something that made it inevitable. Here is what she lost. A marriage that had slowly, quietly erased her. A company that had her fingerprints on every surface and her name on none of them. 9 years of work that lived, for most of its life, inside someone else's story. Here is what she left. The chipped mug on the shelf, the Navy conference room, the post-it notes, the 41 minutes, the version of herself that folded the agenda and put it in her bag and handled everything by email and said nothing. And drove home alone on Route 59 with the radio off and filed it all in an unnamed place and kept going. She left that completely. Here is what she kept. The yellow legal pad from 2014, still sitting on a shelf. Her shelf now in her office on Green Street. The sewing machine. Renata, Priya, Kemi. The folder with 18 documents that had become the foundation of everything she built next. The precision, the patience, the knowledge, earned through years of invisible work, of exactly how a thing is built from nothing and made to last. And the curtains, always the curtains, yellow, warm, catching the morning light in a room that was entirely, irrevocably, visibly hers. She had not needed to take anything that wasn't already hers. She never had. That was the thing Derek had never understood. The thing that had cost him everything, while it cost her nothing except time. Everything she needed, she had brought with her. She always had. Clara never told Derek about the folder. He never knew it existed. 18 documents that built a company he never saw coming, because he was too busy watching the one he was losing. If this story sat with you, share it with one woman who needs to hear it today.